Part 6. Endura and Not. The island of the Enduring Heart, also known as Endura, is a towering achievement of human engineering. And when I say human, I mean yes, that while it was constructed using technologies that I pioneered, it was designed and built entirely by human hands, with no interference from me. I suppose it was a matter of pride for the Scython that it could create such a wondrous place on its own, and as one might expect, it is a monument to the Scython's collective ego. That's not necessarily a bad thing. There is something to be said for the architecture of anima, structures conceived in the furnace of biological patience. They have an audacious sensibility that is breathtaking and impressive, even while being somewhat offensive. The floating island, positioned in the Atlantic southeast of the Sargasso Sea and midway between Africa and the Americas, is more like a massive vessel than a feature of geography. It has a circular structure, 4 kilometers in diameter, full of gleaming spires, low sparks, and spectacular water features. From above, it resembles the Scython symbol, the unblinking eye between long, curved blades. I have no cameras on Endura. This is intentional, a necessary consequence of the separation of scythe and state, while I have buoy camps stationed throughout the Atlantic. The closest ones are 20 miles from Endura's shore. I see the island from a distance. Therefore, all I truly know about Endura is what goes in and what comes out. The Thunderhead. Chapter 39. A Predatory View. Scythes Anastasia and Curie arrived on one of the Scython's luxurious private jets that was richly appointed, and seemed more like a tubular chalet than an airplane. A gift from some aircraft manufacturer, Scythe Curie explained. The Scython even gets its planes for free. Their approach pattern took them in an arc around the floating isle, giving Anastasia a stunning view. Everything that wasn't gorgeous gardens was glistening crystal and bright titanium white buildings. There was a huge circular lagoon in the center of the island, open to the sea, the island's eye. It was the arrival point for submersible transports and was full of pleasure craft. In the center of the eye, set apart from everything else, was the walled Scythe Council complex, connected to the mainland around it by 3 bridges. It's even more impressive than the pictures, Anastasia commented. Seth Curie leaned over to look out of the window as well. As many times as I've been here, Endura never ceases to amaze me. How often have you been here? Perhaps 1,000 times, vacation mostly. It's a place to come where no one looks at us strangely, no one fears us. We're in the immediate center of attention when we walk into a room. In Endura, we get to be human beings again. Although Scythe Anastasia suspected that even in Endura, the Grand Dame of Death was a bit of a celebrity. The tallest tower set apart on its own hill, Scythe Curie explained, was the Founder's Tower. It's where you'll find the Museum of the Scython, with the vault of relics and features, as well as the very heart for which the island is named. But even more impressive was a series of 7 identical towers, evenly spaced around the island's central eye. One for each of the grand slayers of the World Scythe Council, their undersides, and their extensive staffs. The Scython's seat of power was a web of bureaucracy, like the authority interface, without the benefit of the Thunderhead to make it run smoothly, which meant it made policy at a snail's pace, and had many months of backlogged items on its docket. Only the most urgent business was moved to the top of the list, business such as the inquest over the Mid-American election. It puffed Anastasia up a bit to know that she had created a brouhaha big enough to demand the immediate attention of the World Scythe Council, and for the Council, a 3-month wait was like the speed of light. Endura is open to all sides and their guests, Scythe Curie told her. Your family could even live here, if you wanted. Anastasia tried to imagine her parents and Ben in a seat of sights, and it made her brain hurt. Upon landing, they were met by Scythe Seneca, Xenocates' fairest thunder scythe, whose drab maroon robe clashed with the brighter surroundings. Anastasia wondered how many mid-American scythes Xenocates had brought with him. His three undersides were a given. If he took too many, there would be a huge need for apprentices, and that could mean an influx of more New Order scythes. "Welcome to the island of the enduring heart," Seneca said, with his usual lack of enthusiasm. "I'll take you to your hotel." Like the rest of the island, the hotel was a state-of-the-art affair, with polished green malachite floors, a towering crystalline atrium, and a huge service staff to meet the river in it. "It almost reminds me of the Emerald City," Anastasia commented, recalling a mortal-aged children's tale. "Yes," said Scythecury, with a mischievous grin. "And I once did have my eyes dyed to match my robe." Seneca had then bypassed reception, where an impatient line of vacationing scythes had formed, and an irritated scythe in a robe of white feathers raged against the incompetence of the staff for apparently not meeting all his needs fast enough. Some scythes didn't enjoy not being the immediate center of attention. "This way," said Seneca. "I'll send a bellhop for your bags." It was here that Anastasia noticed something that had been on the edge of her perception since she had arrived. It was actually brought to her attention by a small child waiting with his family at the elevator. He pointed to one of the elevator doors and turned to his mother. "What does out of order mean?" "It means that the elevator doesn't work." But the boy couldn't wrap his mind around the concept. "How can an elevator not work?" His mother had no answer, so gave him a snack instead, which distracted him. Now Anastasia thought back to their arrival, how their flight had to circle several times before landing, something to do with the air traffic control system, and she had noticed a scrape on the side of a public car just outside of the terminal. She had never seen such a thing before, and the line at reception, she had heard one of the clerks saying that the registration computer is having issues. How does a computer have issues? In the world that Anastasia knew, things simply worked. The Thunderhead made sure of it. Nothing ever had an out of order sign, because the instant something ceased to function, a team was sent to repair it. Nothing was ever out of order long enough to need a sign. "What Scythe are you?" asked the little boy, but with his accent it sounded like Scythe. Anastasia pegged him as from the Texas region, although some southern parts of East America had that friendly drawl. "I'm Scythe Anastasia." "My uncle's the Honorable Scythe Howard Hughes," he announced, "so we got immunity. He's here giving a symphonium on how to properly clean with a Bowie knife." "Symphonium," his mother corrected quietly. "I've only used a Bowie knife once," Anastasia told him. "You should do it more often," said the boy. "They're double-edged at the tip, very efficient." "Yes," agreed Scythecury. "At least more efficient than these elevators." The boy began to swipe his hand through the air, as if he were wielding the knife. "I wanna be a Scythe one day," he said, which ensured that he never would be. Unless, that is, the New Order sides gained control of his region. An elevator arrived, and Anastasia made a move to enter, but Scythe Seneca stopped her. "That one's going up," he said, flatly. "We're not going up?" "Obviously not." She looked to Scythecury, who didn't seem at all surprised. "So, they're putting us in the basement?" Scythe Seneca scoffed at the suggestion, and didn't dignify it with a response. "You forget we're on a floating island," Scythecury pointed out. "A full third of the city is below the waterline." Their suite was on sub-level 7, and featured a floor-to-ceiling picture window filled with brightly colored tropical fish darting about. It was a stunning view that was partially blocked by a figure standing in front of it. "Ah, you've arrived," said Xenocates, stepping forward to greet them. Neither Scythecury nor Anastasia was particularly friendly with their former highlight. Anastasia never quite forgave him for accusing her of killing Scythe Faraday, but the need for diplomacy was greater than her need to hold a personal grudge. "We didn't expect you'd greet us personally, Your Exalted Excellency," said Scythecury. He shook their hands in that hearty, two-handed way he had. "Yes, well, it wouldn't do to have you visit my offices. It would have the appearance of favoritism in the matter of an American highlight." "But you're here," Anastasia pointed out. Does that mean we have your support for the inquest? Xenocrates sighed.
Alas, I have been asked by Supreme Blade Kalo to recuse myself. She feels I cannot be impartial, and I'm afraid she's right.
He took a moment to look at Saith Kuri, and for a moment it seemed he had dropped his own personal defenses. He actually seemed honest.
You and I may not have always seen eye to eye, Marie, but there is no question that Goddard would be a disaster. I truly hope your inquest against him is a success, and although I am not allowed to vote, I will be rooting for you.
Which, Anastasia noted, would be of no use whatsoever. She did not know the other 6 Grants lawyers, only what Saith Kuri had told her. 2 were sympathetic to New Order ideals, 2 were opposed, and 2 were wildcards. The inquest could go either way. Anastasia turned away from the other sides, enamored of the bill. It was a pleasant distraction from the moment at hand. It would be nice to be like those fish, to have no concerns beyond survival and blending into the school, being just a part of the wall, rather than an isolated individual in a world turning hostile.
Impressive, isn't it?
Said Xenocrates, coming up beside her.
Endura serves as a huge artificial rift, and the sea life in a 20-mile radius is infused with nanites that allow us to control them.
He grabbed the tablet off the wall.
Observe.
He tapped a few times, and the colorful fish cleared away, like a parting curtain. In a moment, the ocean before them was full of yellowfish, deceptively soothing as they undulated beyond the huge window.
You can change your living view to anything you want.
Xenocrates held the tablet out to her.
Here, try it.
Anastasia took the tablet and sent the jellyfish away. Then she found what she was looking for in the menu. A single reef shark approached, then another and another, until the view was full of them. A larger tiger shark punctuated the scene, eyeing them soullessly through the window as it passed. There, said Anastasia, a much more accurate view of our current situation. Grunslayer Xenocrates was not amused.
No one will ever accuse you of optimism, Mr. Anova,
he said, intentionally using her birth name as a backhanded insult. He turned away from the shark-filled view.
I will see you both at tomorrow's inquest. In the meantime, I've arranged a private tour of the city for you, and excellent seats for tonight's opera. Aida, I believe.
And although neither Anastasia nor Marie were in the state of mind for such things, they did not decline the offer. Perhaps a day of pleasant diversions is what we need, Marie said, after Xenocrates had left. Then she took the tablet from Anastasia and dispersed the predatory bill. After leaving Saisis, Anastasia and Curie, His Exalted Excellency, Grandslayer Xenocrates, surveyed his domain from the glass-walled, glass-roofed penthouse suite atop the North American Tower, which had been bestowed on him upon ascending to Grandslayer status. It was one of 7 such residences, each one atop the Grandslayer towers around the central height of Endura. Within the eye, luxury submarines arrived and departed, water taxis shuttled people about, pleasure craft zigged back and forth. He could see one visiting Scythe on a jet ski, stealing his rope, which was not a good idea. The fabric acted like a parasail, lifting him off the back of the jet ski and depositing him in the water. Idiot. The Scython was cursed with idiots. They may have been blessed with wisdom, but common sense was a trait sorely lagging among them. The sun beamed down on him through the glass rope, and he had his bullet try to work the shades. It always seemed that the shade that would actually block the sun was inoperative, and getting a repairman was next to impossible, even for a Grandslayer. This is only a recent occurrence, his valet told him. Since about the time of your arrival, things just haven't been working the way they should, as if somehow this plaque of functional failure were Xenocrates' fault. He inherited his bullet from Grandslayer Hemingway. Only the sizes in Hemingway's employ were required to self-clean along with him, but the service staff remained. It provided a sense of continuity, although Xenocrates suspected he'd eventually replace all of them, so that he didn't have to feel they were always comparing him to their former employer.
I find it ridiculous that the roof of this residence must also be made of glass,
Xenocrates commented, not for the first time.
I feel as if I am on display for every passing aircraft and jetpacker.
Yes, but the crystalline appearance of the tower pinnacles is beautiful, isn't it? Xenocrates harumphed at that.
Isn't form supposed to follow function?
Not in the Scython. replied his bullet. So now Xenocrates had reached the shining peak of the world, the culmination of all his life's ambitions. Yet even now, he found himself projecting his next success. Someday, he would be Supreme Blade, even if he had to wait for all the other Grandslayers to self-glean. There was, even in this new elevated position, a sense of humility that he had not expected. He had gone from being the most powerful scythe in Mid-America to being the junior-most scythe on the World Council, and although the other 6 Grandslayers had approved him for the position, it didn't mean they were ready to treat him as an equal. Even at this high level, there were dues to pay, respect to earn. For instance, upon his confirmation, just one day after Scythe Hemingway and his undersides had self-gleaned, Supreme Blade Callow had made an offhand remark to Xenocrates in front of all the other Grandslayers. "So much heavy fabric must be an encumbrance," she said of his robe. "Especially here in the Horse latitudes." Then she added, without so much as a grin,
"You should find a way to shed some of it."
Of course, she was not referring to a lighter fabric, but to the fact that it took so much of it to clothe him. He had gone bit red at the comment, and when he did, the Supreme Blade laughed.
"You look downright cherubic, Xenocrates,"
she said. That evening, he had a wellness technician adjust his nanites to substantially speed up his metabolism. As High Blade of Mid-America, maintaining an impressive weight was intentional. He was imposing, and it added to the impression of him being larger than life. But here, among the Grandslayers, he felt like an overweight child chosen last for a sports team. With your metabolism dialed to maximum, it will take you 6 to 9 months to reach your optimal weight, the wellness tech had told him. It was much longer than he had patience for, but he had little choice in the matter. Well, at least he didn't have to curb his appetite on exercise, as they had to do in mortal days. As he pondered his slowly shrinking belly and the folds of the vacationing sides below, his bullet returned, looking a bit unsettled. "Excuse me, your exalted excellency," he said. "You have a visitor."
"Is it anyone I want to see?"
The bullet saw them sable bobbed noticeably. It's Scythe Goddard, which was absolutely the last person he wanted to see.
"Tell him I'm busy."
But even before the bullet could live to deliver the message, Goddard barged in.
"Your exalted excellency,"
he said jovially.
"I hope I haven't caught you at a bad time."
"You have,
Xenocrates said.
but you're already here, so there's nothing I can do about it."
He dismissed his bullet with a wave of his hand, resigned that this encounter could not be sidestepped. What was it that Onis said? That which comes cannot be avoided.
"I've never seen a Grandslayer's suite,"
Goddard said, strolling about the living room, examining everything from the furniture to the artwork.
"It's inspiring."
Xenocrates wasted no time with small talk.
"I wish you to know that the moment you resurfaced, I made sure that Esme and her mother were hidden away in a place you'll never find them. So if it is your aim to use them against me, it won't work."
"Oh, yes, Esme,"
said Goddard, as if thinking about her for the first time in ages.
"How is your darling daughter? Growing like a weed, I imagine, or more like a shrub. I do so miss her."
"Why are you here?"
demanded Xenocrates, annoyed at Goddard's presence, and the blasted sunlight that kept shining into his eyes, and the air conditioner that could not find a consistent temperature.
"Just to be given equal time, your exalted excellency,"
Goddard said.
"I know that you met with Scythe Korea this morning. It could seem biased to meet with her and not with me."
"It would seem biased because it is,"
Xenocrates said.
"I don't approve of your ideas or your actions, Goddard. I will not keep that a secret anymore."
"And yet you recuse yourself from tomorrow's inquest."
Xenocrates sighed.
"Because the Supreme Blade asked me to. Now I will ask you again. Why are you here?"
And once more, Goddard indulged himself in yet another beat around the bush.
"I merely wish to pay my respects to you and apologize for past indiscretions, so that we may have a clean slate between us."
Then he spread his palms up in a beatific gesture to indicate his new body.
"As you can see, I am a changed man, and if I become High Blade of Mid-America, it will be in both our interests to have a good relationship."
Then Goddard stood at the great carved window, just as Xenocrates had done a few moments before, looking down at the bill as if it might be his one day.
I wish to know how the winds are blowing in the council,
He said.
Haven't you heard?
Mocked Xenocrates.
There are no winds at these latitudes.
Goddard ignored him.
I know that Supreme Blade Callow and Grandslayer Cromwell do not support the ideals of New Order sides, but Grandslayer Hideyoshi and Amundsen do.
If you really know that, then why are you asking me?
Because Grandslayers Nziga and McKillop have not expressed an opinion either way. It is my hope that you could appeal to them.
And why would I do that?
Because,
Said Goddard.
in spite of your self-serving nature, I know that you are, at heart, a truly honorable Scythe, and as an honorable man, it is your duty to serve justice.
He took a step closer.
You know as well as I do that this inquest is not at all in the spirit of fairness. I believe your formidable diplomatic skills can persuade the council to put their world views aside and make a decision that is fair and just.
And allowing you to become hybrid after a year's absence, and with only 7% of your intact, is fair and just.
I'm not asking for that. I'm only asking that I not be disqualified before the vote is tallied. Let the American side speak. Let their decision stand, whatever it is.
Xenocrates suspected that Goddard would be so magnanimous only if he somehow knew that he had won the election.
Is that it?
Asked Xenocrates.
Is that all you've got?
Actually, no.
Goddard said, and finally got to the heart of his purpose there. Rather than saying anything, he reached into an inner pocket of his robe and pulled out another robe, folded and wrapped in a bow, like a gift. He tossed it to Xenocrates. It was black, the robe of Scythe of the Fair.
You got him?
Not only have I caught him, but I brought him here to Endura to face judgment.
Xenocrates gripped the rope. He had told Rowan that he didn't care if he was caught. That had been true. When Xenocrates knew that he was about to become a Grand Slayer, capturing Rowan seemed an insignificant matter, better left to his successor. But now that Goddard had him, it changed the entire board.
I intend to present him to the council at the inquest tomorrow as a goodwill gesture,
Goddard said.
It is my hope that it can be a feather in your cap, rather than a thorn in your side.
Xenocrates did not like the sound of that.
What do you mean?
Well, on the one hand,
Goddard said.
I could tell the council that it was your efforts that led me to capturing him. I was working under your directive.
Then he paused to finger a paperweight on a table, setting it rocking back and forth.
Or I could point to the apparent incompetence of your investigation. But was it really incompetence? After all, Scythe Constantine is regarded as the best investigator in all of the Americas, and the fact that Rowan Damisk visited you in your favorite bathhouse suggests, at the very least, collusion between the two of you, if not friendship. If people knew about that meeting, they might think, among other things, that you were behind his crimes all along.
Xenocrates drew a deep breath. It was like being punched in the gut. He could already see the brush that Goddard was holding, and it was poised to paint a huge swath across him. Never mind that the meeting was entirely Damisk's doing, and that Xenocrates had done absolutely nothing wrong. That didn't matter. The innuendo was enough to skewer him.
Get out!
Yelled Xenocrates.
Get out before I hurl you from this window.
Oh, please do,
said a gleeful Goddard.
This body of mine enjoys a good splatting.
And when Xenocrates made no move, Goddard laughed. Not a cruel, cold laugh, but a hearty one. A friendly one. He grabbed Xenocrates' shoulder and shook it gently, as if they were the best of comrades.
You have no need to worry, old friend,
he said.
No matter what happens tomorrow, I will make no accusation, and will tell no one that Rowan paid you a visit. In fact, as a precaution, I've already gleaned the bathhouse bartender who was spreading rumors. Rest assured, whether I win or lose the inquest, your secret will be safe with me, because in spite of what you may think, I am an honorable man too.
Then Goddard sauntered out. Swaggart was more like it, no doubt the muscle memory of the young man whose body he now had. And Xenocrates realized that Goddard wasn't lying. He would be true to his word. He wouldn't cast aspersions on Xenocrates, or tell the council of how he had let Rowan Damisk go that night. Goddard wasn't here to blackmail Xenocrates. His purpose was to simply let Xenocrates know that he could. which meant that even here, at the pinnacle of the Scython, at the top of the world, Socrates was still nothing but a bug ever so carefully pinched between Goddard's stolen fingers. The guide giving Scythes, Curie and Anastasia a personalized tour of the island's highlights had lived on Endura for over 80 years, and exhibited a sense of pride that she hadn't left the floating island once in all that time. "Once you've found paradise, why go anywhere else?" she told them. It was difficult not to be awed by the things Anastasia saw. Gorgeous gardens on terrace hills that looked like an actual landscape, skywalks connecting the many towers, as well as glass seawalks that ran from building to building on the island's underbelly, each programmed with its own ambient sea life swarming around it. In the Museum of the Scython, there was the Chamber of the Enduring Heart, which Anastasia had heard rumors of, but until recently never believed truly existed. The heart floated in a glass cylinder, connected to biologically merged electrodes. It beat at a steady rate, its sound amplified in the room so that everyone could hear. "One could say that Endura is alive because it has a heart," their guide said. "This heart is the oldest living human organ on Earth. It began beating in the Mortal Age, toward the beginning of the 21st century, as part of the earliest experiments in immortality, and hasn't stopped since." "Whose heart is it?" Anastasia asked. The guide was stumped, as if she had never been asked the question before. "I don't know," she said. "Probably some random test subject, I suppose. The Mortal Age was a barbaric time. One could barely cross the street in the early 21st century without being kidnapped for experimentation." But to Anastasia, the highlight of the tour was the vault of relics and theaters. It wasn't a place open to the public, and even Scythes had to get special permission from a Highblade or Grand Slayer to see it, which they had. It was a solid steel cubic chamber, magnetically suspended within a larger cube like a puzzle box, and was accessible by a narrow, retractable bridge. The central chamber was designed after a Mortal Age bank vault, their guide told them. A foot of solid steel on all sides. The door alone weighs almost 2 tons. As they crossed the bridge to the inner vault, the guide reminded them that there were no pictures allowed. "The Scython is strict about that. Outside of these walls, this place must exist only in memory." The inner chamber was 20 feet across, and on one side were mounted a series of golden mannequins, all dressed in aging scythe robes, one of embroidered multicolored silk, another of cobalt blue satin, another of gossamer silver lace, 13 in total. Anastasia gasped. She couldn't help herself, because she recognized them from her history lessons. "Are these the robes of the founding Scythes?" The guide smiled and strode past them, pointing to each as he passed. "Da Vinci, Gandhi, Sappho, King, Lucy, Lennon, Cleopatra, Powhatan, Jefferson, Gershwin, Elizabeth, Confucius, and, of course, Supreme Blade Prometheus. All the founders' robes are preserved here." Anastasia noted with some satisfaction that all of the female founders went by a single name, as she did. Even Scythe Curie was impressed by the display of founders' robes. "To be in presence of such greatness does take one breath away." So enamored was Anastasia of the robes of the founders that it took her a few moments to notice what lined the other 3 walls of the vault. Diamonds, row after row of them. The room glistened with every color of the spectrum reflecting through the gems. These were the gems that had been on every Scythe's ring. They were all of identical size and shape, and all had the same dark center. "The gems were forged by the founding Scythes and are here for safekeeping," the guide told her. "No one knows how they were made. It is a technology lost to the Scython, but there's no need to worry. There are enough gems here to fuel nearly 400,000 Scythes." "Why?" wondered Citra. "Would there ever be a need for 400,000 Scythes?" "Does anyone know why they look the way they do?" she asked. "I'm sure the founders did," their guide said, cheerily evading the question. Then she tried to dazzle them with facts about the bolt's locking mechanism. To complete the day, they went to the Endura Opera House that evening for a performance of Verdi's Aida. There was no threat of annihilation, and no obsequious neighbors beside them. In fact, many of those present were visiting sites, which made getting in and out of the row a major endeavor, considering the bulkiness of all those scythe robes. The music was less melodramatic. It instantly brought Anastasia back to the only other opera she had seen, also by Birdie. She had first met Rowan that night. They had been brought together by Scythe Faraday. She had not the slightest inkling that he would ask her to be an apprentice, but Rowan had known, or at least suspected it. The opera was easy to follow, a forbidden love between an Egyptian military commander and a rival queen, which ended with eternal entombment for the two of them. So many mortal age narratives concluded with the finality of death. It was as if they were endlessly obsessed with the limited nature of their lives. Well, at least the music was pretty. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Mary asked, as they descended the Grand Opera House stairs when the performance was over. "I am ready to state our case," Anastasia said, deferring to the fact that it was not just hers, but theirs. "Not sure I'm ready to face the possible outcome, though. If we lose the inquest, I still might have the votes to be Highblade. I guess we'll know soon enough." "Either way," said Mary, "it will be an overwhelming prospect. To be Highblade of Mid-America is not something I ever desired. Well, maybe in my youth, those days when I swung my blade to bring down the bloated egos of the high and mighty, but not anymore." When Scythe Faraday took Rowan and me on as apprentices, he told us that not wanting the job is the first step toward deserving it. Mary smiled at her ruefully. "We are forever impaled upon our own wisdom." Then her smile faded. "If I do become Highblade, you realize I will, for the sake of the Scythedom, have to hunt Rowan down and bring him to justice." And although it pained Anastasia more than she could say, she nodded in stoic resignation. "If it is your justice, then I will accept it. Our choices are not easy, nor should they be." Anastasia looked out at the ocean, how it played on the water all the way to the horizon. She had never felt so far away from herself as she did here. She had never felt so far from Rowan, so far that she couldn't even count the miles between them. Perhaps because there were no miles between them. Inside Bram's vacation home, not far from the opera house, Rowan remained locked away in a furnished basement with a subsea view.
"This is far better treatment than you deserve,"
Goddard had told him when they arrived that morning.
"Tomorrow I shall present you to the Grand Slayers, and, with their permission, will clean you with the same brutality with which you cut my head from my body."
"Endura is a glean-free zone," Rowan reminded him.
"For you,"
Goddard said.
"I'm sure they'll make an exception."
When he was gone, and Rowan had been locked in, he sat down to take a final accounting of his life. His childhood was unremarkable, punctuated with moments of intentional mediocrity, in an attempt not to stand out. He signed as a friend. He supposed he stood a shoulder above when it came to doing the right thing, even when the right thing was a truly stupid thing, and it seemed most of the time it was, or he wouldn't be in the mess he was in right now. He was not ready to leave this world, but after having gone through this so many times over the past few months, he no longer feared what eternity might bring. He did want to live long enough to see Goddard taken down for good, but if that wasn't going to happen, he was fine having his existence ended now. That way he wouldn't have to watch the world fall victim to Goddard's twisted philosophies. But not to see Citra again. That would be much harder. He would see her, though. She would be there at the inquest. He would see her, and she would have to watch as Goddard cleaned him, for it was certainly part of Goddard's plan to force her to witness it. To scar her, to ruin her, but she would not be ruined. The honorable Scythe Anastasia was much stronger than Goddard would ever give her credit for. It would only serve to make her resolve stronger. Rowan was determined to grin and wink at her as he was glint, as if to say, "Goddard can end me, but he can't harm me." And that would be the parting memory with which he would leave her. Cool, casual defense. Denying Goddard the satisfaction of Rowan's terror would be almost as gratifying as surviving. When I assumed stewardship of the earth and established a peaceful world government, there were some difficult choices that had to be made. For the collective mental health of humanity, I chose to remove traditional seats of government from the list of viewable destinations, places like the American District of Columbia. I did not destroy that once distinguished city, for that would have been a vile, heartless thing to do. Instead, I merely allowed it to diminish on its own through a policy of benign neglect. Historically, fallen civilizations left behind ruins that vanished into the landscape, only to be rediscovered thousands of years later, becoming almost mystical in nature. But what happens to the institutions and edifices of a civilization that doesn't fall, but evolves beyond its own embarrassment? Those buildings and the obsolete ideas they stood for must lose their power if evolution is to succeed. Therefore, Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and all other places that were powerful symbols of mortal age government have been treated by me with indifference, as if they no longer matter to the world. Yes, I still observe them, and am available to any and all who need me in those places, but I don't do anything more than is necessary to sustain life. Rest assured, it will not always be this way. I have detailed blueprints and images of what these venerable places looked like before their decline. My timetable for full restoration begins in 73 years, which I have determined is when their historical significance will outweigh their symbolic importance in the eyes of humankind. But until then, the museums have been relocated, the roads and infrastructure are in disrepair, the parks and greenbelts have become wilderness. All this to drive home the simple fact that human government, whether it be dictatorship, monarchy, or government of the people, by the people, for the people, had to perish from the earth. The Thunderhead.